Good morning and welcome back to the Good Morning Minute podcast. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and I'm excited to kick off season 2 with a theme that touches every single one of us: relationships. That's right, friends. Relationships are at the heart of our human experience. They shape who we are, how we grow, and how we show up in the world. Whether it's family, friends, romantic connections, or even the relationships we have with ourselves, each one carries lessons, challenges, and moments of pure joy. This season, we'll sit down with incredible guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and insights on building, nurturing, and even healing relationships. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive into conversations that inspire connection and growth. Now that we've set the stage for today's conversation on relationships, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest. He brings a unique perspective and a wealth of experience to the table, and I know his insights will leave you feeling inspired and equipped to navigate your relationships with more intention and understanding. So please join me in welcoming Jay Jackson to the Good Morning Minute podcast. Welcome, Jay. I am excited that you are here with us today.
Hey, thanks, Angelina. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm super excited to be able to serve and add value to your audience. Let's get it going. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so let's get started with a little introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to today's conversation.
I'm like most people, right? And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I am. I'm a country little boy from Birmingham, Alabama. I'm a Navy brat. I've lived in multiple states before graduating high school. I think it was 5 states to be exact. And so that gave me the opportunity to be, I guess, kind of exposed into multiple cultures, whether it's Texas or, California, Virginia. I was exposed. And so I think that what gives me a unique perspective because I also then went into the military and I served in the Air Force, lived in multiple countries, visited multiple countries. And so I've had the opportunity to enjoy or even have some challenges in different relationships that
Mhm.
I with people that I've met throughout my lifetime. But yeah, I've been married, and divorced once, remarried again, and so father of 2 children and 2 young adults. I won't even say children, 2 young adults, and so we've had our relationship challenges as well. So relationships are something that I'm huge on, and I think it's smart for all of us to try to figure out how can we navigate kind of the challenges that we face in relationships and make sure we got healthy and thriving relationships.
Awesome. And you hit on several components of relationships because normally, with February coming up and whatnot, we think, oh, romantic relationships, but relationships are a big component of just life in general. There's so many aspects of relationships. So I kind of like that you've touched on a little bit of everything just in your own life journey. I think that's awesome. So let me ask you, Jay, in your opinion, what's the most important foundation for any healthy relationship?
Trust. At least for me, right? If you don't have trust, then you don't have a relationship. I actually had a friend of mine who once literally, and I considered this guy to be a great friend of mine, one of my best friends.
Hmm.
And he actually told me he didn't trust that I would be able to get a specific job done. And I thought our relationship just went south from there. Because I don't think any relationship can be fruitful if not built on the foundation of trust.
Okay. Yeah. That is awesome. Trust. So where do we start with that? Like, is it, do we start with the foundation of self-trust where we have to learn how to trust our own self, our own instincts? Yeah, let's expound on that just a little bit more. So how it feeds into, the relationships that we have with ourselves, but also as it continues throughout our life, like, because it's going to expand into the other relationships as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head. It is. It's self-trust. Do you keep your commitments with yourself? Do you, the promises that you make to yourself, whether it's, hey, I'm going to go to the gym X number of days per week, or I'm going to eat healthy, or, I'm going to read more often, whatever it is, the commitments that you make to yourself, that's where the foundation of the trust begins. Because if you don't trust yourself, you will never be able to trust anyone else in a relationship. And so, self-trust is very important. I think that, we've all let ourselves down at some point, and so unfortunately, that creates a form of limited beliefs or limited thinking within ourselves because we start to project our own lack of trust or insecurities, onto other relationships that we might have with people. And so I definitely believe it begins with self-trust. Every relationship, like I said before, I'm a parent. And so, my relationships with my kids, I can tell you that there was a time where I just trusted them, right? Like, hey, there's no way, my kids would lie to me or wouldn't tell me the truth or wouldn't end up, where they said they were going to be. And then I had to come to the realization, like, they're still little humans. And so you have to make sure that in every relationship that there's a strong level of trust. One thing that, my daughter and I, we used to, kind of have some friction over is, hey, where are you going? And she thought it was, oh, I'm trying to, control or dictate her life. I'm like, no, I just need to trust that you are where you say you're going to be so that in the event something does happen or you don't come home at the time that we agreed you would come home, I know exactly where I need to start my hunt and who I need to go find because, you told me you were going to be here. And so I just think that self-trust, is the foundation of it all, because otherwise we're going to project, our own, our lack of self-trust onto other relationships and they just become toxic. And, we create resentment, and things of that nature. And so I just think it's important for us to always have, a strong foundation of trust and you just get it. Like I tell people all the time, I'm going to give you my trust right out of the gates. It's yours to lose. But once it's lost, it's one of those things where it's very difficult to, get it back. And so that's why I just say, trust in every relationship is important.
Oh, yes. And you're talking like, okay, I freely give it to you because I want to give you the benefit of the doubt that you are going to be 100% genuine with
Yep.
me. And this, I mean, now we're talking parenting, we're talking romantic, we're talking business, whatever. That is coming freely. So, how do you cultivate a foundation where it's reciprocated and return back to you? Like, how do you help encourage those relationships? And let's talk business a little bit. How do you help in that with utilizing trust as your foundation, but helping it be reciprocated back to you?
Yeah, well, I think it begins with my own character, right? Like, how do I show up every single day? If I say that I'm going to complete a task, or say we're partnering or collaborating on something, or it's client delivery. If my responsibility is to meet a deadline, then I have to meet that deadline. If I'm supposed to produce a certain quality, of work, then I have to make sure that I'm producing the highest standard or the highest quality of work. If you, quote a potential client a specific price, don't, move the goalpost on them, so to speak, as you get further down into the project and start to penny pinch and things like that. So I think it starts with me first, honoring my commitments, being a man of my word and just doing business, what I like to call by the good book. Do unto others as you would have others, do unto you, or the golden rule, is also something that folks would call it. And so I just think it starts with me, my character, how I show up every day. And if I honor my commitments, then I can hold anyone else accountable for, what they say they're going to do or not going to do. And I think a lot of times we let people off the hook because we ourselves aren't walking in integrity or, being authentic in terms of our own character and behavior. And so when people don't honor their commitments, it's easy to let them off the hook, because we've already let ourselves off the hook.
Yeah. And it's almost as if you're just like accepting of that's just how it's going to be. And then again, you mentioned resentment in the beginning. If you don't hold yourself to an expectation of I'm going to be trustworthy, I'm going
Hmm.
to hold myself to a character of someone who is consistent to their commitments, then that's what you're going to project out into the world and that's what you're going to receive back, and everything that falls into that limiting belief
Yeah.
of yours is just going to affirm the things that you are thinking. So definitely have to shape your mindset around that. So I mean, relationships, they go through ups and downs, and especially like in business and whatnot. what are some of those conflicts that you've experienced in your journey and in your life? And how have you resolved them? Whether that meant, okay, we're gonna just agree to disagree and we're gonna just part ways, or was there like any reconciliation where you could salvage the relationship?
Yeah, I just think it depends on the relationship, right? So, obviously, some family members will get more get out of jail free passes, than some other folks might get. So I just think it depends on the relationship. If you've had a long withstanding relationship with someone, say 15, 20 years, at that point, you know who you're dealing with. You know exactly whether or not you can or cannot trust this person, or whether or not this person has lied to you in the past. And so I think at some point you just have to decide and say, you know what, I'm no longer going to accept this type of behavior. Like a few years ago, I got to the point to where I started saying like, hey, your apology is no longer accepted. I don't accept that. The only thing I'm going to accept is changed behavior. And so, when you're very clear on, what is acceptable or unacceptable, or like my wife and I, we like to call them like, what are our non-negotiables, within our relationship? And we're very clear, okay, don't do this, this, or this, and our relationship will be fine. We can get through everything else. But once you introduce one of these things that are non-negotiable, it's like, hey, these are things that this is the foundation of our relationship, which is that trust thing. And so if we violate what we consider to be those non-negotiables, then hey, our relationship is now in question. And so the way that, of course, I haven't always handled, things today as I've handled them in the past. So I'm not perfect by any stretch. In the past, I would probably yell, scream, I've probably said my few choice words, at a time or two. But over the years, I've gotten a lot better at being able to, just kind of maintain my composure, have a calm, conversation, stick to the facts, and the data that we have. That way, it's not an emotional, reaction. And that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of times in a lot of relationships, we react versus respond. We don't take the opportunity to, gather our own thoughts, gather our own emotions, gather our feelings in that moment, and then sit with that, and even sometimes it might take you 3 4 days, it might take you a week to sit with it so that you can really process, okay, what's the meaning that I want to attach to this, and then what direction do I want this relationship to go now that I have this new information. And so once you've decided, hey, this is the meaning that I'm going to attach to it, and this is the direction that I want this relationship to go in, then you go back to that person and say, hey, let's set a time for us to really sit down, because I think there's something that we need to have a discussion around. And, if you bring facts and data versus your feelings and your emotion to the conversation, and you're able to specifically say, this is what was said, this is my understanding of what was said, and here's how I'd like to handle it moving forward. And of course, there may be some misunderstandings, wrapped up in some of the experiences that you might have with people. So if that's the case, then you just got to say, hey, look, I'm going to ask a couple of clarifying questions so that I can be clear that I understand what you meant when you said this, or what you meant when you did this. And so it's just, I think a lot of conflicts that we have in relationships, they come down to misunderstandings where some folks aren't willing or even able, to ask the tough questions. And then some folks aren't willing and or able to stand in there and take whether it's constructive or destructive criticism, because there's both. I just think we have to have enough courage to have those tough conversations, because it's in the tough conversations where we become better, we become our best version that we can become. And that's what, prepares us to go through or face any additional challenges that we might face, with that person, depending on who the relationship is with.
And this is a lot of wisdom that you are casting out here on the airwaves for sure. No, but it's true, conflict resolution. I think I was talking earlier today, this morning, as a matter of fact, um, talking about how to fight fair, because it's not necessarily
Mm,
you're not wanting to fight and be right and lose the relationship, lose the partnership. You're
right.
wanting to fight for the relationship. You want to be um because you're intentional, right? You're intentional about your relationships. You don't just go and relationship with anybody and everybody. You're selective. You take time to cultivate that. the trust, the commitment, the engagement, all of that stuff. And so when those conflicts hit, I mean, everybody's human, everybody's going to have feelings, but I think the fact that if you respond overreacting, you're going to get better resolution in those moments and help other people get there. Because I know I lead a team of women, and you know how us women can be at times, a very, can be very reactive.
Right.
Um, and so I know just over the years in my own leadership journey, I've had to step back and go, okay, what are the facts here? And so when I
Hmm.
communicate with facts. And so I've had to have those tough conversations where I pull a person in and say, okay, help me understand
Hmm.
what you're receiving. What are you hearing?
Right.
What are you reading? Whatever the case may be. Okay. Now let me invite you into my perspective. Let me tell
Right.
you where I'm coming from. And, we'll read it from both perspectives and I will acknowledge what they are understanding because that is very true to them. And I'm not going to take that away. But also, too, can you acknowledge where I'm coming from and see no
Right.
emotion behind it, too? And
Yeah.
so it's hard because you're asking people to to grow their mindset and see from a different lens.
Hmm.
So understanding that, like how I mean, I don't know, in your business relationships, in your, just in your endeavors, what have you experienced in helping people get there, like helping them grow as they either you lead them or they're part of your team? What are some of those journeys and experiences?
Yeah, the one thing that I've learned, and I learned this from a coach that I was working with several years ago, and that is we're all children on a journey, right? Whether I'm in the leadership role or I'm in a followership role, whether it's with my aging parents or even with my young adult children, we are all children on a journey. We're all trying to kind of see what the next step is. We're all trying to grow and unfold. And oftentimes, whenever we run into conflicts or meet some form of resistance, it's back to what you were saying. One person is looking at it through this lens or through this perspective, and then this individual is looking at it through a different, not wrong or right perspective, just a different perspective based on our own education or even life experiences. And so I think the most important thing is, when we so this is something that my sister taught me, and then something I literally learned recently, probably within the last year. So my sister always says to me, anytime you're having a conversation with someone, listen for their heart. Right? Because oftentimes, whenever there's a conflict, a person is really crying out from their heart, whether it's anger, frustration, disappointment, a range of the emotions. But if we are intentional about being active listeners and we're actively listening for their pain, we're listening for their heart, it's a lot easier for us, again, whether we are in the leadership role or the followership role, we're able to look at this individual as a child on their own individual journey, still trying to figure things out, whether they are 15 years of age or 75 years of age. We can listen to their heart and we can really say, okay, this is what is causing them pain. This is what's causing them frustration. And then it's our job, especially as leaders, if we're going to be effective communicators and effective leaders, we now have the responsibility, and I would say the moral obligation to say, okay, I hear your heart. Now, how can I protect your heart and guide you to where we're trying to get to, versus being destructive and hearing your heart, and then taking that and using it against you as, a tool of manipulation, unfortunately, that some people do in relationships. The second thing is, I recently discovered that there are three phases or three kind of relationship stages that we go through. And I discovered that we go through it more so with our parents than we do with strangers, but it's also possible. And so that first phase is where we idolize, right? We think our parents or whomever we just met, like say it's a guy that you're dating, for example, or, a woman, if a guy's listening to this, you think they're amazing, right? Everything about them, they're amazing. You're still getting to know them, so they're special, right? They make you smile, they make you laugh, they make you feel great, until they finally do something that touches a nerve or frustrates you or even upset you, and then we demonize them. because it's like, now I can't believe, you went from this person that I idolized. Now you've hurt me, or you've done something to hurt my feelings. And so now you demonize that person. And then as you mature, not as they mature and grow, but as you mature and grow, you come to realize that they're just a human. And so you humanize them all over again. After learning that, I went back and reflected on a lot of my relationships, and I realized, like, there's a cycle that kind of continues to perpetuate itself if we don't go back and do a lot of the things that we've talked about in this conversation, which is have those tough conversations to be able to say, hey, I made a mistake in understanding what you were trying to say. What you said made me feel this way. But I now understand that you were maybe dealing with something of your own, and what you said or what you did wasn't a direct attack on me. That's just something that you yourself were dealing with. And I talk about this in my book, where I say to everyone, there, and it's common. We all know this, but there's a cause and an effect for everything that we go through in our lives, for sure. But oftentimes we want other people to change, when in reality, we are the ones who need to really do some self-examination, and really chisel away at our own, again, lack of trust, insecurities, and things of that nature, instead of, saying, hey, it's the other person's problem. What can I learn from this? What can I gain from this, so that I can grow, and become a better leader, better father, better husband, better friend, brother, niece, nephew, whatever, your title might be with whoever you come in
Yeah.
contact with.
Yeah, I like that you're saying that because I mean, and you're absolutely right. And so when I have these conversations with my team, I'm like, okay, if this is the situation, how are you contributing to that situation? Because
Right.
you're feeding into it. You're
Yep.
you're allowing it to grow and fester. So what are you contributing? Because it's definitely a reflection of what you're producing, right? From
Hmm.
inward outward. Um, but then I also too have to look at myself and going, okay, how am I cultivating that as well from a leader perspective? Because what I see on the team is a reflection of what's going on internally. And that
Absolutely.
was for me, I heard that a couple of years ago. And I remember when I first received that, it was like, well, what you see on your team is a reflection of your leadership. And I was just like, ouch, like,
Yeah.
wow, that really did hurt. I need to take a minute and think about that. But then as I let it kind of just marinate and just sit with it, I realize that is so true. That is
Yeah.
so true. If I want to see different outcomes, then I need to be different
Yeah.
in how I
Like,
interact.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
One of the, like, I started to look at our heads as an actual projection machine, right? Like,
Mm,
if you go all the way back to, like, if you go to your office, right, or where you're working at during the day and you're doing a presentation, that projector is your head. And what you see in life is what's on the screen or the wall, once the projection has come out. And so anytime, and at least for me, this is kind of how I've kind of simplified it for my little monkey mind, is whenever I'm seeing or experiencing something that is causing some type of, change in my state, or some type of internal conflict. And again, I'm a lot better today than I was, in years past. But now I look at it and I go, okay, there's something that I need to learn. There's something that's I believe that God is trying to, get my attention and say, hey, look, you're being frustrated here because there's something I'm trying to get you to learn. I'm trying to get you to grow in this area. And so once I, kind of shifted my perspective and started to see that, this is truly a lesson for me, and this is something that I can learn and take and learn and grow with this, that's when I started to kind of pause and say, then if I'm seeing frustration out here, that frustration is beginning in here. And so I need to examine my own thoughts and my own feelings around this, whether, especially like if it's a moment of being triggered. And I know a lot of times, especially when you're in a leadership role, whether it's conflict resolution with members of your team, or even conflict
mm,
resolution with yourself and one of your subordinates, there can be moments where you're now triggered. And if we don't do the deep work to examine ourselves, and identify, like, why is this triggering me? me? What is the root cause of me being triggered? And then what do I need to do to remove that trigger? Like I tell people often, like, yeah, you were triggered, but it's not the world's responsibility to tiptoe around your triggers. It's your responsibility to identify what your triggers are, what caused them, and then go back and do the work so that you're no longer going to be triggered by that thing.
No, and then I agree 100%. I think so because um if we all just had a tiptoe around each other, I mean, there would be no true engagement or,
Right.
relationships at all because everybody's scared. Oh, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to offend you.
Absolutely.
Or, I don't want to get snapped at or whatever. So for sure. And so I think you're hitting it. I mean, we're talking about self-trust in order to, trust being the foundation of a healthy relationship. But if you don't even have that for yourself, then you don't have it to give. And everything else in your life is going to suffer for it. You're not going to be able to trust yourself in any component of your life out there. Oh my gosh.
Well, and I think the key, like you just made a major point, and I think it said you don't have anything to give, right? Because
Mhm.
everything that we have within us, like it's okay. I'll go and give you a quick example. I just met my biological father for the first time 2.5 years ago, right? And I'm about to turn 45, okay? And for us to meet when I was 42 years of age, that we've had a range of emotions and a range of experiences or scenarios that have triggered me. And there are things that I thought I had healed from, specifically, let's just say around abandonment. And there have been conversations that I've had with him where I've had to literally go back to him and say, hey, in this stage and moment, I'm having a hard time trusting and depending on you. And it's like, whoa, like for him, because he's never had anyone come to him and actually, say the things that I had been saying to him. And there was no aggression or drama, in it at all. It was just two men sitting down, one on one, having a conversation, and me saying, hey, look, I was triggered by this lack of action on your part. And I was triggered by this because I was abandoned by you 42 years ago. And so, in order for me to fully heal, I now have to come to you and have this tough conversation with you about why it's so important for me to be able to have people in my life that I can trust and depend on. Because the number one person, as a young man, I believe the number one person that a young man should be able to look up to and trust and depend on is his father. And so I never had the ability to do that for 42 years. And so then finally we do meet with each other and we begin to establish a relationship. And that relationship was immediately it's trust. Like we literally had to look at each other in each other's eyes, and we literally said, are we going to trust each other and really do this thing called life together moving forward? Because it wasn't by his request or my request that we got back together. It was my mother and his sister. And I tried everything I could to put the toothpaste back in the tube once, the process started to move because
Yeah.
I didn't want to deal with all those feelings and emotions that I had suppressed for 42 years.
Mhm.
But for me to let my guard down and now trust you, there's absolutely no way I'm going to allow you to ever lie to me. You can't cheat on me. You can't give me half truths. You can't give me any of that because you lost the opportunity for us to build up that. And so if we're going to go into this relationship cold turkey, it's just me and you jumping out here on faith, trusting each other from day one.
Mhm.
I need to be able to trust and depend on you for the rest of my life. And so when we had that experience that caused me to question, whether or not I made the right decision to trust him, it triggered something in me, and it did. It made me very angry. It hurt me, and I took a couple of weeks. Like I couldn't go around him. I couldn't speak to him on the phone. I couldn't because I had to deal with all of that before I did go around him. Because if I didn't deal with all of that, that part of me that I told you I used to be a lot worse than I am today,
Yeah.
he would have gotten all of that. He would have gotten all the anger, all of the emotion, all the fear, the frustration that was
Mhm.
bottled up for 42 years.
Yeah. And That is, I mean, that's important too. And you're talking self-awareness now. You're talking like emotional intelligence. Like I realize this is happening. Um, and it's hard because we as people need to just get into this position of, I want to be better and better, like better than I was yesterday, and that, 1%, 2%, whatever, but just a little bit better. And that initiative, that idea of being better can just make things so much different in every aspect of your life. But it takes the wanting, you have to want it. You have to
Yeah,
want it.
yeah.
And I know with I work in the child welfare system, and I work with people that have gone through that. And I see the cycles of brokenness, and I see the cycles of,
Hmm.
just the repetitiveness of broken relationship after
Yep.
broken relationship. And it's so hard because I want to just grab these young people and go, oh my gosh, change your
Yeah,
life, change it,
yeah,
change the trajectory of it. And this is how you do it. But you have to, I mean, and it's like you said, you have to get down to the truth, right? All of that buried stuff and really process it. And I appreciate you saying that you have to feel it. You have to feel it. You have to go through it and allow it to be there, but then move beyond it.
yeah. And I think a lot of times we don't do that deep work, right? That self-examination, that chiseling away at the rough parts of us because it is
Mhm.
painful, right?
Mhm.
And growth is painful, whether it's physical growth because you're going to the gym or the mental growth because you're working and exercising your mind to become that 1 or 2% better. It's painful and it's a hard task. And I'm speaking from experience, not something that I've read in a book. The old version of me, when I talk about the anger, that issues that I had, and I just gave you, what they were stemming from, the old version of me would attack, and there would be some foul words that would come out of this thing here. And now I've gotten to a place, like you say, we're talking about self awareness and emotional intelligence. Like there's a part of me now that I have to say, hey, look, you go sit over there in that corner and you don't come out until I give you permission to come out.
Mhm.
And I don't like for that version of me to ever come out because I understand how that little boy is still in so much pain. And but
Mhm.
we're working, still working on him every single day. And I'm intentional about that because I realized that that version of me was causing damage in my relationships. And so, for example, like I told you, like I'm on my second marriage now, and my wife and I mean, I've made a commitment more so than the commitment we've made together. I've made an individual commitment to say, like, no, I'm never going to go through a divorce again. It's very, very painful. I don't wish it on anyone ever. And so, because I don't want to do that, then that means I have to do a great job of making sure that portion of me stays over there, and don't come out until I tell it to come out.
So true. It
Yep.
is. It's true. And I mean, I could go on and on all night long talking about,
Me too, man.
all
Me
this.
too.
Great conversations, great
Yeah, thank
conversation. Um, so Jay, as we get ready to kind of wrap up,
you.
what kind of advice would you give young Jay, if you had the opportunity? Speaking from what you know now, your wisdom and all, what kind of
Mhm.
advice would you give young Jay if you could?
Oh, wow. Some of the things that you are doing to cope with your pain are destroying you. So there was a period when I had some high risk behaviors,
Mhm.
whether it's promiscuity, alcohol, things of that nature. A lot of it was because I was trying to mask the pain. And so my advice to my younger self would be, hey, you're destroying yourself. This behavior that you're exhibiting right now, albeit fun, and it's an adrenaline rush for you, that behavior is going to cause more damage in your life than it's going to, be good for you. And so, if my younger self would have listened, I think my life would be a whole lot different right now. Now, I'm super grateful for every experience. I have zero regrets for anything that I've been through in my life. But I would tell that younger self, hey, slow down on some of the high risk behavior. You've got a ton of life to go out and experience all the things that you want to experience. Don't try to do it all, before you turn 21, in some
Yeah.
cases.
Oh, love it. Love it.
Yeah.
So Jay, if I have someone out there that's like, hey, I want to know a little bit more about Jay, or I want to kind of see what he has to offer, how can our listeners get in touch with you? And do you have anything like a book that you want to promote or anything else that's out there that you can offer our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, well, first, you can, whether it's disruptive leadership on Instagram, Facebook, you name it, Jay Jackson Disruptive Leadership. Just Google that or search for me on social media and you'll be able to find me. In terms of a giveaway, I'd like to give away my Work Less to Profit More bundle. That bundle, you can get it at workless2profitmore.com/bundle and save, similar to State Farm, bundle and save. But yeah, it's a bundle of SOPs and templates, checklists, and guides from what I've been able to put together to streamline mine and my clients' operations, so that businesses can operate more efficiently and multiply their impact, their income, and their authority. So, work less, the number two, workless2profitmore.com/bundle and save.
Well, thank you so much, Jay, for taking time and giving us a little wisdom. I was so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, everyone. You know what that means. It's a wrap. I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.